Good morning, everyone. So as Julie's mentioned, I'm Tamsin from the Bertha Centre for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Graduate School of Business at University of Cape Town. The Bertha Centre is an inclusive convening place for uncovering new innovation and increasing social impact in Southern Africa. So I'm delighted to be introducing the session today. Scale is something that we all think about. So I've got this great idea, but is it scalable? Is it replicable? Is it something that's going to have an impact in the local area? Or is it something that I could bring to a broader community for bigger and more positive social influence? Scale can also be important for efficiencies, depending on the type of business. In Southern Africa, we think a lot around micro-franchising and appropriate models for business. But how can it be done? Are there any lessons for us that we can learn from others? Does being socially entrepreneuring mean something very unique within this context? Is it about collective action, or is there something about breaking down the barriers that existed between government and community and business and partnering in new ways? We're very, very lucky to have two incredible organisations to discuss this morning, Good Start and BRAC. Each speaker today will speak for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a panel so people can ask questions about themes around scale. So hold your questions to the very end, please. So I'm delighted now to introduce the CEO of Good Start, Julia Davison. As many of you know, Good Start is Australia's largest network of early learning centres across the country. That's, from what I understand, 655 centres. And a reach of 62,000 families. Julia likes to describe it as Australia's only $100 million startup. Good Start was created in 2009 as a partnership to build the capacity of early learning in the really critical 0 to 5 years, which we'll hear more about from Julia. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamsin. I'd also like to take the opportunity to formally acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which RMIT stands, and pay my respects to the owners and elders, both past and present. Good morning, everyone. When Danny asked me to come and speak about how scale matters, and told me I'd only got 20 minutes, I thought, how on earth am I going to do this? How am I going to tell the Good Start story on the one hand and then talk about the amazing opportunities that scale brings in the early years from the formation of Good Start? Last night at dinner, Danny did say to me, oh, don't worry if you go over, but however, I have read my speaker's notes and I do intend to be respectful to my fellow panel members, so I will do my best to contain my enthusiasm to my 20-minute slot. What I'm going to do this morning is do two things. Firstly, share with you the Good Start story. Many people in Australia know the Good Start story, but I'm very much aware that lots of our audience are from overseas and might not be quite so familiar with it. And the story itself is truly remarkable. Once I've done that, I'm then going to talk briefly about the opportunities for impact and influence. So let's start with the Good Start story. How many of you are from Australia? Hands up. Oh, so large part of the audience. So you probably remember that in 2008, Australia's largest childcare provider, ABC, was on the verge of a major crisis. ABC was Australia's biggest provider and it covered 15% of Australia's childcare, and it went into receivership. And when the receivers came in, they immediately closed 100 of the centres. This resulted, as you'll see from the media coverage here, in widespread fear across the community about what on earth was going to happen. What were families going to do if they couldn't access childcare? What was the government going to do about it? You know, the community moved into government's got to sort the problem out mode. And what on earth did the future hold? A number of Australia's not-for-profit, however, didn't see this as a crisis. They saw this as a potential opportunity. Mission Australia acquired 30 of the centres, and decided that it could actually do something with those centres. However, a conversation then started, and that was instigated by Evan Thornley, who had a conversation with Toby Hall, who was the Chief Executive of Mission Australia, who involved Michael Trail, the Chief Executive of Social Ventures, and then other people were brought into the conversation from the Benevolent Society and the Brotherhood of St Lawrence. And the conversation went along the lines of, if we really believe in the importance of the first 5 years, and if we really believe the evidence that that can actually make a difference, why would we stop at just acquiring 30 centres? Why wouldn't we acquire the whole lot? So the social purpose was really clear. All of the partners knew that if they could actually acquire this huge network of centres across the country, that they could do something absolutely amazing with them. This presented a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was the opportunity to impact on practice, the opportunity to take a failed chain of childcare centres and turn it into a chain of high-quality, inclusive, community-connected early learning centres to do something completely different with the network. But not only was there that opportunity, there was an opportunity with scale to influence policy and to therefore have an impact that was more widely spread across the whole of Australia. So the vision was there, but there was a deal that needed to be done. This deal is absolutely amazing, and I can say this, I wasn't part of it, I wasn't involved in it. I came on board at Good Start as Chief Executive way after the deal had been done, after the organisation had been established. But when I look back and when I read the story, when I talk to people about the story, and when I'm telling the story as I am to you today, it just is truly amazing. And I apologise, I'm going to have to skirt over it to stick to my allotted time frame. But I just want to give you some highlights in relation to the deal. The 4 syndicate members who came together started by acquiring some advisory input. They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have money to spend on huge legal fees, huge corporate advisory bills, huge advice from private equity companies, public relations advice, because they needed to win this deal. There were private equity bidders bidding for this chain of childcare centres. It wasn't just a, we'll hand it to you on a plate sort of scenario. So they secured the advice, and they secured a huge amount of advice from the various players I've got listed on the left-hand side of the slide. And they managed to secure that either pro bono or with an upfront small fee and the final fee based on success. So, for example, KPMG, I don't think I'm breaching confidence here, but they did $5 million worth of work around pulling the deal together, and they only expected an upfront fee, which was a very small fraction of that, with a view that if the deal was successful, that they would get the rest. But putting a deal together wasn't enough. Money was required for the purchase. Discussions happened with the bank, with numerous banks, and again, those of you who are in Australia will recall that every single bank in Australia lost huge amounts of money through ABC Learning. So ABC Learning, just to give you a sense, had $2 billion worth of debt when it went under. So there were a lot of people that lost a lot of money. So hardly the most attractive venture to invest in, unless you actually had a view that there was a social purpose as well. And our chairman, our now chairman, Robin Crawford, who got involved in these discussions in helping social ventures put all this together, had a very strong personal relationship with the Deputy Chief Executive of NAB. The Deputy Chief Executive of NAB also happened to head up NAB's corporate social responsibility work, and their focus was on education, and they understood that the early years made a difference, so they came to the party. Our syndicate members, the 4 charities, came to the party. They said, hang on, we need to put our money where our mouth is. We can put money into this, especially if we believe through all the advisory work that's been done that there's a return, that there's a financial return, as well as the social return. And again, you know, my comments about the initial conversation, the purpose of Good Start was very much aligned to the organisation's mission. They all knew that if you invest in the early years, it can make a real difference to life outcomes. There's research, US-based research, that actually shows less crime, less mental illness, less homelessness, better educational outcomes, better employment if you invest in those early years. And government came to the party. So for me, this is a fantastic example of where the stars were all starting to align, where people had a common purpose and started coming together. Government needed to do something to actually, well, they didn't need to, government wanted to do something to actually help sort this mess. So government provided a $15 million loan. I should point out these are all loans, by the way, not gifts. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. So what Social Ventures did was they created a new model of social capital notes, and a large number of individuals put money into Good Start. And again, you know, their reason for investing in Good Start was partly a financial one, but more importantly, one where they had values that were aligned with the social purpose, and where they were very clear that this was a social investment, not just a financial investment. So that was the deal. And there were other bits that came together, and I said I haven't got time to tell the story, but without the government, and if I reflect back on yesterday's session on can government lead social innovation and social change, in this case, without the government, this wouldn't have happened. The government was such a strong supporter. The federal government worked with all of the state governments to get agreement to waive payroll tax. So we don't pay payroll tax, we're not for profit, we don't pay payroll tax. Without that, this deal couldn't have come together, the numbers wouldn't have stacked up. So lots of other bits that were critical, but just a fantastic example of everyone coming together. So the deal was done, and 2 years ago, this very week, Good Start was announced as the preferred bidder, the preferred purchaser of the ABC centres, and a brand new social enterprise was created, one of the largest in Australia. And our vision is for all of Australia's children to have the best possible start in life. Our mission is to do that through what we do in our centres in terms of high quality, inclusive, community connected early learning, but not just that, through partnering with others so that we can have greater impact outside of our footprint. And we have 3 goals: raising the quality of early learning, being more inclusive, and designing our programs in a way that we can reach out to children and families in more vulnerable circumstances. And of course, our stability goal. We don't want another ABC debacle. We don't want everybody to have put together all this effort to set up this new social enterprise and for, you know, there to be headlines again about the whole thing falling over. So we work with very, very strong business disciplines in order to deliver our social purpose. And the more revenue we can actually generate, the more we can actually generate a surplus to reinvest in quality and inclusion. And to date, we've been able to do, in just a very short period of time that we've been operating, we've been able to recruit an additional 1,000 staff. We've been able to invest an additional 30 million in professional development around best practice early learning. We've been able to recruit our own professor of early learning to help us in our quest to actually transform our chain of childcare centres into high quality early learning centres. We've been able to set specific programs up in low CFA areas, and we've generated a modest surplus of, after we've done all of these things and after we've repaid more than half of our debt, we're way ahead on our debt schedules, of 5 million in the first year and 8 million in the second. Oh, hang on. So we have great reach. We've got 73,000 children. We've got 61,000 families who we touch. We have 15,000 staff, and we have a turnover of 736 million. So we are big, and we're the only national provider. And just to finish off in terms of the second half of my talk, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the opportunities that this gives us in terms of impact and influence. And I'm going to focus on two. There are stacks, but I'm going to focus on two. The first is around taking change to scale. Now, if you're us and you've got 650 centres across Australia, you just have this amazing opportunity to take what you want to do and do it in lots of places. But it's not quite that easy. We have a very clear view, and I heard one of the speakers yesterday say, bottom-up's not enough and top-down doesn't work. I think that was Pamela. So our challenge is, how do we take this network and how do we get the right balance of bottom-up innovation and top-down support and evidence base? So we have a whole strategy around this. There's a whole piece that we call Empowered Centre, our Empowered Centre director work, which is about giving our individual centre directors in their local communities the freedom and the flexibility that they need to meet the needs of children in their centres and families in their own unique local communities. And there's lots of ways that we can actually, other than just free them up to do that, but there's lots of ways that we can support them in that. So we're taking the work off them that we think is, and they think is, not critical to their transformational challenge, and we're doing some of that centrally. So I'll give you some examples of that. Recruiting the additional 1,000 staff that we recruited and recruiting an additional 500 early childhood teachers. We've got a whole centralised process for actually attracting, recruiting. We're having to do some recruiting overseas, all around that, which actually means the centre director has the final say in who they want in their centre, but they don't have to go out, to careers fairs. They don't have to actually do adverts in the newspaper. They've got, lots of support in that sense. I'll give you another example of what we're doing to support them. We've recruited a team of early learning advisors who sit in our departments of early learning and research. Deborah Harcourt came to us from the Australian Catholic University, where she continues to be the professor and have a chair of early learning, continues to teach on the master's program, continues to supervise PhD students, but she also works with us where she leads the transformation of our practice. So she's actually driving the beyond babysitting to high quality early learning, our professional practice piece. And her team's there for the centres to actually pull on. And we've designed an approach where we are aligning our resources so that we can set up demonstration centres around the country. So where we're putting resources into doing the physical environment, more resources into professional development, more resources into leadership, where people can look and see the sort of beacons. But we don't just want, again, top-down beacons, we want bottom-up innovation. So we're developing a whole network of innovation and excellence where individual centres can be recognised for things that they are doing in their local communities that are making a difference. And we're building a whole mechanism for sharing all of that. So that's just a little bit about the opportunities for taking change to scale. And when we've done that, we cover 15% of the long day care services in Australia. So if we can make that shift, we'll be starting to actually shift the whole of the sector, and hopefully we can then provide pull again by sharing what we're doing with other people in the broader sector who don't have that broader support. And then my second, or actually before I move on to my second theme, I just want to talk about the opportunity around partnering in taking change to scale, because one of the things that we have realised that we were unaware of when we started out on this journey was that our network provides an amazing network for others who are actually trying to do things in local communities. And I haven't got time to talk about the whole range of partnerships, but just to give you a very quick illustration, we have a partnership in South Australia with Food Bank SA where we approached them because our children were coming to our centres in some of our communities, not having had breakfast, not having, our staff was saying they wouldn't get fed when they went home, and our staff asked us for more food budget, we thought, hang on a moment, rather than more food budget, why don't we partner? What's actually happened, that has now extended that program, and we're a very big partner for Food Bank SA in South Australia. They're actually using the opportunities they've had with our network to actually influence eating habits through fresh food, as an illustration of how they're one of the social benefits from Food Bank. And I could talk more and more. We've got a partnership with Teach for Australia. We've got a whole range of partnerships where other people are actually seeing our network and saying, hang on, if I can link into this can really help what I'm trying to do. And together we have a huge amount of synergies. And then, just to finish, I wanted to talk a little bit about influencing the policy debate. As I said earlier, our founding members' vision was not just about what we could do in the centres, it was about how we could influence the policy debate. So what our size does is it gives us tremendous opportunity. We have no difficulty in getting to see and meet with politicians, both state and federally. This happens to be a photograph of Julia Gillard, our Prime Minister, visiting one of our centres in New South Wales. But we've been able, my chairman and I have been able to meet with Tony Abbott, we've been able to meet with a whole range of other politicians to talk about our views, help raise the awareness of the importance of the early years, talk about the importance of professional wages, talk about our very strong views about access for all children to high quality early learning, and why we think that's important. And we've got a voice in the media, so we always get called up by the journalists. But as everyone knows, talking to politicians and talking to the media is not really enough when it comes to actually trying to raise awareness. And one of the other huge opportunities we've got as a very large organisation is that we have resources to do things that some small organisations don't have the resources to do. So we've been able to afford to invest in a mass media campaign which we're about to launch in the next few years around raising awareness around the importance of the first few years. So thank you. I will wrap up now. I could talk for hours about some of the opportunities of scale, and before I get down off the stage, I'll just mention some of the things I haven't talked about. Social procurement, our ability to take greater risks, because if something doesn't work in part of our network, it's not a complete disaster. Our ability to cross-subsidise across our network, our ability to provide different sorts of career paths for people, our ability, because of our scale, to employ specialists, and the list goes on. But as I said, I will respect my fellow speakers' time, and I will finish now. So thank you, folks.
So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce you to our next speaker, Asif of BRAC. Asif is the Senior Director of Strategy Communications in the Capacity Division for BRAC. Asif likes to describe BRAC as the biggest social enterprise you've never heard of. And this is no exaggeration, it's several 100,000 employees in 10 countries around the world and touching the lives of over 126 million people. Since starting out as a relief operation in a small Bangladeshi village in 1972, over 40 years ago, BRAC has been an innovator in the creation of opportunities for the poor to lift themselves out of poverty in a sustainable way. Ladies and gentlemen, Asif Saleh.
Thank you. Next time somebody comes in and says that size doesn't matter, pause and say, it depends. Okay, so yeah, I think if I talk about BRAC, let me just get a sense of how many people actually, this was actually a headline that came in an article in Fast Company a few months ago. And how many of you have heard of BRAC? Okay, significant numbers. Okay, but so I'm going to talk a little bit of how it kind of started. How many of you heard of Bangladesh? Okay, all right. Because Bangladesh was spelled wrong in the front slide, so like maybe I thought that okay, this is I need to introduce Bangladesh a little bit as well. But good, my work's cut out. Bangladesh is actually known to a lot of people for disasters and stuff. But if you, after the show, maybe go and Google Miracles of Bangladesh, a phrase. There's a video of Gapminder, Hans Rosling, who has done, which shows that what kind of amazing improvement it has made in terms of social and human development indicators, which means that how many children die before under 5, before they turn 5, how many new mothers die while they are giving birth. So those numbers have drastically come down in the last 20, 30 years. So Economist actually did a feature on it last month, on how did Bangladesh do it better than compared to other countries, particularly within the South Asia. And ta-da, bit of a bragging. And brag came in as one of the magic ingredients, because, so that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today. At a glance, if I just randomly again go and talk about some of the size, largest non-formal primary school system with 36,000 schools. We have so far graduated 10 million children, 8 million microfinance borrowers, 100,000 community health workers, largest legal aid providers, second largest dairy milk plant, largest retail chain for fashion, and 200,000 full-time and part-time staff. And there's the big news. It's a social enterprise. So you can see that this is basically a whole bunch of things. So somebody in US mentioned it, that it's almost like a GE of nonprofit, so it's like a conglomerate. So but the interesting bit is that 70% of the fund of BRAC is actually self-generated. So when you think that it's almost close to $1 billion annual budget, that's something quite significant. But how did it all start? Did it start like that? Was there this big plan that we're going to actually create this behemoth? It wasn't. Actually, that's why I think one of the things, I met a lot of young budding entrepreneurs here. I think one of the message would be that to think really big. Started over here. I mean, this is an example, this is a picture of, you're all familiar with Grameen probably. So microcredit was the first access point, entry points. BRAC originally started as a relief organization, then soon realized that to build relief is not enough. When there's an economy where there's nothing going on, there's no economic activity, you start with some access to finance to people so that they can get on with some level of enterprises. So you start with the women, and they all came together, and you started giving loans in a group-based mechanisms. But that's not the magic bullet, right? It just gives you an access, it gives you a start. But then we found out when these women came in every week, there were a lot of problems they talked about. So they talked about their children not being able to go to school because there was no government schools. So we started the schools. So it was a one-room, very low-cost model, which again was very effective in scaling up quickly. We focused mostly on curriculum and the learning outcome. Didn't focus too much on high-tech stuff. As a result, kept it low cost so that we could scale up. Our average, national average, still is better than 10%, by 10% than the national average, the BRAC school children who graduate out of the schools. And considering these are dropouts who actually finish the 5-year curriculum in 4 years, it's a significant achievement. Then we found out that there's a problem with the health. I mean, there are new mothers who are dying. People didn't have access to good quality healthcare information. So we created this large pool of community health workers. Again, the school example that I gave, also we didn't recruit teachers from outside, because when you think that you have to scale up and your resources limited, you have to really think frugally. So both in this example of the school and this healthcare model, we focused on the women within the community, pick them up and train them up, and then basically use them, they were part of the system. So it helped in 2 ways. One, there was a lot of ownership. It was their relatives and neighbors who were working with them. And 2, they're not paid staff of BRAC. They're community health promoters. So what they were volunteers, but they made money through selling over-the-counter medicines and various healthcare products. So So this was done all across the country, and as part of another intervention that we figured that was necessary. Again, this was like Bangladesh was mostly an agriculture-based country, and they didn't have access to high-quality seeds. So we went in and created a small seed enterprises, which provided good high-quality hybrid seeds. In Bangladesh, you know that one thing you know, there's a lot of people, and with a very small piece of land. And it's amazing that in the last 40 years, the number of cultivable land shrunk by half. People doubled, but yet we are self-sufficient in food production, and that's happened because the productivity in the agriculture went up dramatically. So then we found out something interesting in the microfinance model as well. So that some people who do really well want access to bigger loans, right? So what to do with them? So the microfinance has a very small size loan. And then there was a group of people whom even if you give microfinance, their poverty does not get, or they cannot become entrepreneurs. They are so poor, so extremely poor, they don't have access to social network. So there was these two stratas. So we came up with this economic model where on the bottom 15% got asset transfer coupled with training and monthly stipends, kind of like modeled around the welfare program in the US. So it's a two-year intervention. For the better performers, we created bigger size loan scheme. And then we created a small and medium, for SME, for small and medium sector enterprise, we created a bank. So that's the economic model, that you graduate from one step to another if everything works out well. That still was a problem. There still was a market failure. So the people who had good access or doing well, their market was limited because there was no traditional business would not go to the rural areas because cost was too high. There was not enough profit guaranteed. So these rural artisans who made good products using the microfinance, or the milk producer, dairy producers who produced milk in the same village, there were a lot of milk, but not enough demand. But then again, on the urban side, there were urban children who didn't have access to good quality milk. So there is a market failure. So we came in then with the enterprise model again. So this is a case of this Shondharani. We often talk about this. She's a rural artisan. Came up with the products, and we helped with the various intervention on education and health, as I mentioned, and finance. But then there was so she was somehow connected with the economic stream, but one thing that was missing was this access to market at the enterprises. So that's where we came in, and we started these enterprises through this integrated program. And this is actually now one of the biggest retail stores in Bangladesh, which sells her products. So we basically provide money, we help not only on the input and quality control, but also to market her product. This is how it looks when it gets outside, and so it's very upmarket, as you can see. So, so we call it the multiplier effect. So 2 + 2 = 5. So there is just not, I'm going to quickly brush through this because already went through this. The idea behind it is that when you start something, there's, like we did in the microfinance, there are a lot of spillover effects. And typically, but when the absence of a good government system and a good economy, there's a lot that the organization and the enterprise we had to do. So we went ahead and went with it. So when there was microfinance, people bought cows, they needed access to market to sell the milk, we produced the dairy brand. They needed to do better quality cow in the hybrid, we had the artificial insemination enterprises. They need access to better quality feeds, so we created the feed enterprises. So these are all kind of related and had multiplier effects, not only helping the rural economy, but more importantly to help our organization, because it's actually, although at the beginning it was subsidized, but it was very much profitable at the end. So if I talk about the spectrum now, in terms of on one end being exploitative business and on the one end idealistic charity, fully subsidized. So we are basically trying to keep ourselves sustainable and sit in the middle, figuring out, trying to strike the right balance. The example of Arong that I gave, now Arong is the retail store, the fashion retail store. We now have about 65,000 artisans connected to Arong, and it's growing bigger. And this year we're going to go international as well, and by launching our e-market. So I'm sure you can also buy the products of Shondharani. Not going to speak too much about these, but so we basically, from milk to silk, we have now about 16 to 17 enterprises. Again, all of them started as a support to the existing development intervention. Solar power plants in village homes. So that's how it looks right now. So it's just the enterprise section, and we also created a whole bunch of investments, which the dividend comes to the mothership, because which is the BRAC. So that's how. So what's the bottom line then here? So we have basically now touched the lives of about 126 billion people worldwide. BRAC now is not just in Bangladesh; it's 10 other countries, and as I mentioned, Bangladesh has done really better in terms of social and economic indicators, and partly because of these interventions of the NGOs.